This lesson will deal with the early Roman Empire. Now, the Roman Empire starts here in Italy. What you're looking at here is a map of the Mediterranean Sea with all of the country labels taken off of it. And the reason why I show it to you is I want you to see how important Italy is, right here, to the Mediterranean Sea. Now, the Mediterranean Sea has rich civilizations all around it, and there's quite a bit of trade going on in the waters here. So whoever controls the Mediterranean Sea is in a position to get a lot of money and a lot of wealth. And as you can see, Italy is very, very well positioned right smack dab in the middle of the sea. So it's a very useful place, especially in the ancient world. It's a very strategically useful place to control, and Rome is going to use that to create a very large empire. But let's start at the very beginning. So, as I was just saying, the Italian peninsula is a very, wealthy place. It's a great place to control. But Rome doesn't start off controlling it. Rome itself is just this, city. It's just this sort of small area. They control the city and the surrounding territory for a while. Actually, before Rome comes up, it's the Etruscans who are the big cheeses in Italy. They're the big rulers of Italy before Rome comes up. But Rome, rises up, overthrows the Etruscan kings, and they start doing their own thing. This is a map of what the political situation was, again, before Rome starts rising up. So Rome is going to eventually create this really big empire, starts off right here in the little inset here. You can see just controlling the city and the surrounding area. They start off just here, and it's the Etruscans who are up here that dominate the peninsula. But Rome is going to defeat them and start rising up. The story of the Romans overthrowing the Etruscan kings and becoming their own leaders is rife with legends and stuff like that. One of them is of this guy Horatius, who supposedly stands bravely on this bridge against all these Etruscans and holds them off long enough for Rome to be able to win. It's just a legend of Horatius on the bridge, but again, it's just important to know that Rome starts off small, they overthrow the Etruscan king, and then they begin to come up. Another thing that's important to know is that they overthrow the Etruscan kings and thus have a deep-seated distrust of kings. They don't like kings. So after they get rid of the Etruscans, they create what's called a republic, which is a form of government in which the leader's not a monarch. Certain citizens have the right to vote. The Roman Republic had a very complicated government. It was like ours. It had different branches and different jobs. There's voting going on. So it's very complicated. To try and make it as simple as possible, the especially important thing I want you to know is the Roman Senate. The Roman Senate is made up of about 300 patricians. I'm going to tell you what those are in a second, basically rich guys. It's made of 300 of them. They serve for life. And while it starts off just as like an advisory body to these other guys, it ends up being the most important thing. They end up being the ones who really make the laws and rule while Rome is a republic. The Senate ends up being the place. And it's much like our Senate, someone will come up in the front, they'll talk, they'll vote on things. Now, it's important to take a step back for a second and look at Roman society in general. I told you that only patricians are in the Senate. Well, what's a patrician? It's one of Rome's wealthy landowners. They're, the guys over here. The rich, the wealthy, the elite, they're the ones who are the senators, the decision makers. And the plebeians, these guys over here are, your regular people, your less wealthy people, the small farmers, the merchants, and those guys. Meanwhile, a consul is an officer who sort of runs the army. A consul is kind of like the president. Again, it's a little bit different. There's like two of them, but it's just also an important job in the complicated Roman government. But again, you should know that there's a fairly hefty divide between the rich and the poor. And no surprise, the rich are the ones that dominate this divide. They dominate the early republic. They're the ones that make the decisions. Now, plebeians did have some rights. They were allowed to vote. So Rome has voting. If you were an adult male and you were a plebeian, you could vote, but you couldn't get elected. So you could sort of vote for your favorite patrician to, go into various government roles. So the rich people would often try and get followings of the poor regular people. They would try and get the masses of people to like them. But again, the patricians themselves couldn't rise up high in government. And patricians and plebeians weren't allowed to marry one another. It was sort of like a caste system. So with this makeup, the Roman Republic has great success. They eventually conquer all of Italy, so they take over all of Italy. All of Italy is controlled by Rome now. Then it confronts Carthage, which is its main rival. Carthage is a city over here in northern Africa. And Carthage had its own little empire going. All this stuff in the green was the stuff that they influenced in their cities right here. Rome was coming up. They started taking over some more land, and these guys both get into a big war. It's actually 3 different wars called the Punic Wars. Essentially, it's just Rome versus Carthage, vying for, who's going to be the top dog in the Mediterranean. These wars produce one of the colorful characters of ancient history, who is a guy named Hannibal, who led Carthage in the wars, but Rome wins, right? This lecture isn't called The Rise of Carthage, it's The Rise of Rome. So Hannibal does a lot of impressive stuff in the wars. He's the guy on top of these elephants over here. He goes and terrorizes Rome, but the main point is he loses, and Rome defeats Carthage and becomes just the unrivaled master of the Mediterranean area. They're big, they're powerful, they're wealthy, they're ruled over by the Senate. Seems like everything is going great, and then we'll continue that story tomorrow.